Hello and welcome to UC Today. I'm Tom Wright and I'm delighted to be joined by Paul from Poly. How's it going, Paul?
Hi Tom, going fantastically. It's summer, the weather's good. What's not to like? Nice to meet you again.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to have you on. And I'm looking forward to this one actually because we had a similar discussion, I think, a few months ago, and I've got a
Yeah.
feeling some of the things we discussed then, some of the predictions and trends may have gone a bit differently to how we'd expect. So, talking about hybrid work, the return to the office. Let's start off by setting the scene. What are you seeing out there at the moment?
Well, it's pretty interesting. Businesses are committed to return to the office, getting people back into the real estate. Um, Employees, they're generally saying, yeah, they'll go back to the office, but at the start, as we saw people, talking about coming back to the office, there was a great excitement about getting out their homes and getting back into that workspace. Um, the office owners, the companies, they were quite excited about having people coming back, and coffee was getting laid on, free pizza in some cases. The reality is, people aren't returning to the office quite as fast as was initially expected. They are returning. We are seeing people going back. But the question is in what volume, and the reality is that the general employees are not coming back to the office in anything like the high 3 days a week that everyone was predicting. It's more like 1 day a week at the moment, and they're not showing any signs, certainly through the summer months, of rushing back. So very interesting times. Very interesting time.
Yeah, so as you said, that trend is slightly different to what we'd expected. Maybe we thought it would be more of a balance between remote home and the office. What do you think sort of driving that? I don't want to call it a reluctance to go back to the office, but maybe not wanting to go back as much. What's behind it?
Well, it's interesting because it is being the profile of people are not going back. They've been termed the reluctant returners. In truth, there's a number of things that are coming into play for folks who historically were in the office, had 2 years working from home, and now are expected to return to the office. The reality is they've got used to working from home, and they've made it work. They've made it work through their own lifestyle choices. Um, they've got used to the expense or lack of expense of working from home, and that's a big thing people talk to me about is, the commute is pretty expensive. It's expensive on time. It's expensive on money. I now have to buy my lunch as well. So there's a thought going out there that if I'm going to return, companies have got to earn my commute. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. And that was a kind of an interesting phenomena. There's still reluctance for people to just go and mix with the masses, as it were. So there's a concerns about safety, COVID, Omicron. I think we're on top of that. But what's coming next? And actually, do you want to really go and grab yourself some Omicron? The other thing, though, which I think is a real core issue, is the value of being back in the office. People have been working at home for quite some time, and it's not that they're not going back, it's just they're not going back in the volume that was expected. And that's because they're not yet seeing the value of returning into that office space. For sure, they do predict for themselves that they're going to get value in collaboration, but how much collaboration are they actually going to do? And in fairness, companies haven't yet figured it out. We as individuals haven't yet figured out how do we make sure when we do go to the office, the other people that we need to be there to collaborate with are going to be there as well. So there's a whole load of issues at play there, and businesses do need to get a handle on how do you make it attractive for people to come back into the office.
Yeah, and perhaps a year ago or so, we saw some high-profile businesses, particularly in the tech space, be quite open and flexible about how they let their employees work. Maybe sort of offering remote working almost indefinitely. And now we're seeing some kind of not forcefully, but say, we need you back in the office now. Maybe they've worked out that they need to have their people around a bit more. So I'll be interested to know, Polly, speaking to your customers, have you seen many businesses change their stance or realise that perhaps what they laid out at first wasn't the right path for them?
So it's worth saying that there are companies at the extreme, and what I mean is extreme of opinion. There are some companies that say we don't want people back in the office, and for some businesses, particularly some small businesses, maybe your own, working from home is that is the norm for the business. That's a remote office or remote working type of environment. There are some businesses that mandate we want everyone back in, 5 days a week from date whatever, first of October. The reality is that's a statement and a stance, and in both cases it is. There's more of a gravitating to a blend of the two. And what we've found over, the last 6 months, 12 months is that you can't mandate return to the office. You have to magnetize return to the office. And what I mean by that is you have to make it attractive for people to come back into the office. And I don't mean, hey, we talked earlier on about, the expenses people have of commuting. I don't mean, washing that away by giving people more money. That's not what people are asking for. They're looking for, good reasons to be able, sorry, to justify going into the office, and when they're in the office, being able to do the things that they want to do in the most productive fashion. So what we're seeing now is a realization within organizations that they need to do more to make the office an attractive place. And in the round, it's things like, what's the culture of the company that encourages people to come back? Who are the stakeholders and what are they getting out of people coming back into the office? Consideration to the demographics, because we're not all the same, and so different people have different aspirations, and you can do it by job style, you can do it by age, but there are nuances and subtleties to the design of a return to the office plan that didn't exist before. And when incidentally, what it also means is not everyone is in the office all of the time. So that's where the mandates of everyone needs to be back in the office 5 days a week kind of really doesn't work. Yes, you can mandate it, but in the global war for talent, you can only mandate for as long as people are willing to accept it. And I don't think people are going to be willing to accept it for a very long time. So that point of changing and making the office an attractive place, and then it becomes part of the blend of a hybrid working scenario. The office is one location where you do your work, but you're doing things there in a particular fashion that you can't do quite so well, maybe working from home. And that's the thinking that businesses need to have.
So let's talk about what businesses can do to ensure they're providing or finding that balance, and also providing kind of the needs for people who want to stay remote, work at home, and get that blend right. How are you, when you're talking to customers, how are you helping them find that balance?
Well, so it's interesting. I should say there are some companies that are finding this themselves. Okay, and I'll give you an example. So I built a little model in my mind of when return to the office first started happening. What did we see as a company? And we saw three types of purchase of our products. So we're in the technology space. We're part of that people, place, technology triad. And so what we saw was some companies would buy video bars to put in the existing rooms that they had. We make a product called Studio USB. They put that in the room, pretty straightforward, makes it easy. Bring your own device, plug it in, and you can work, in the office as you were working from home. Not a lot else changed. Very quick decision making. Some other companies, slightly longer decision making, recognizes that not all meeting rooms are created the same. So they would design the technology in those rooms based on the size of the room, the use of the room, and so they were longer cycle, but they would be designing a portfolio of solutions from Poly. So not just our Studio USB I mentioned, but they were using Studio X, some of our other technologies as well. They would be typically, a 12-month project cycle. And then I saw some other companies, which goes to your answering of question. There were some other companies that thought, stop, hold on a minute. What is it we actually are as a company? What do we want to be to our employees? What do we want to be to the outside world? So they started looking much deeper into what's the culture of the company? What are the principles of this company? How do we support the culture and the principles through our working practices? And that means what do we expect by way of return to office? Much longer decision making, but much more impactful in the business. And the sort of things that they were doing are the sort of things I'm now seeing a broader spectrum of customers looking at is, that cultural question. So building in things like, hey, we have returned to office, but it's part of the portfolio of locations in hybrid working. So we need to build in flexibility. We also need to think about, I mentioned demographics earlier on. You think about demographics of our associates. If you're a younger person, it was once said to me, if you're a young person, you use the office to meet, to date, and to mate. And that's not all young people are like that, I have to say. Just I'm not trying to tar them all with that same brush, but it kind of makes sense. You're looking for your networks, you're looking for your social networks, you're looking for your work networks, and so on. If you're older, um, myself, for example, I go in for very specific reasons. I have my networks. I understand the organizational culture. So I have different needs to it going into the office. So companies need to think about that. What's the demographics of the workplace? You also need to think about the types of works that are happening in the office as well. How do you support that? So have you got a high need for collaboration? And some people will, in some groups, if you're a designer, it may be very high need. If you're an analyst, you may actually need, more focus in your work profile, in which case, you may be more at home. So organizations moving towards thinking about the type of work, the type of people that are in their organizations, those are the things that are becoming really, really important. And then once we have done that, then you think about, okay, how do we make this organization cohesive through the culture that supports that, demographic diversity, the work style needs and so on. And that's what I'm seeing now. Businesses are moving towards catering for that element of, it's no longer just about let's open the doors and they will come. It's more about thinking of the space. And I'll give you an example of a company that's gone this way. So Lego in Denmark, we have seen them go through. They were one of the early companies, incidentally, that did that. Let's think about what does this mean for the culture, as they were thinking about return to the office, a year and a half or so ago. Their office design now is focused on a redistribution of the space to, just opened a new building, and it's 1/3 collaboration space, unheard of historically. So 1/3 collaboration space, 1/3 is social space, and 1/3 is focus space. And that's a very different blend from the way an office would have been designed in the past. And that's a direct result, as I say, of that deep thinking about your organization and the makeup of the organization.
That sounds like quite a good example of taking the time and then arriving at a solution that sounds like it would be quite an enjoyable place to be in.
It is one of the most fantastic offices I have ever visited. I've not visited the new one, I visited the previous one. And it's not only Lego they make for their customers, they actually have the whole office is kitted out with the various Lego models, and also some things have made themselves. It is truly stunning as an office to visit, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds it. So let's talk a little bit then about kind of the products. You mentioned a couple of poly devices that have been quite popular, but what types of products are you seeing really in high demand at the moment?
Um, so I'll talk about personal, I'll talk about group. So when we all rushed home, what we saw was a rapid rise in the demand for corded headsets and webcams. Okay, so very personal communication. What we're seeing now is that personal communication is a surge in demand, but for wireless headsets. So this is people on the go. So thinking Bluetooth headset that you're using with your laptop, Bluetooth headset that you're using with your mobile phone on the go, and wherever you are, you take your headset with you. We're seeing that move to wireless very, very strong. And so the Voyager range of products, Voyager Focus, Voyager Focus 2, from Poly being particularly successful at the moment. We're also seeing in that personal space for home use, people upgrading because they got through the COVID environment. So we make an all-in-one video bar, USB connected to your PC. In fact, I'm on video in that at the moment, called a P15, and that has audio and video, and the audio has acoustic masking. We call it acoustic fence. So it removes all the extraneous noise outside of the beam of the video. So we're seeing a surge in that. That's people investing in the long term now, recognizing home working is here to stay as part of that hybrid portfolio of work styles. The other thing that we're seeing, and we're seeing it really surge, is investment in video products for room video enablement. But what's interesting here is it's the whole range of collaboration space sizes. So from focus rooms where you can use, the P15 or the new R30, which is a small room system video bar, to room systems for small, medium, and large rooms. And Poly, we make a range of products for Poly room kits, imaginatively called, which are compatible with both Zoom, Teams, and other vendor as a service systems out there, but a real investment at the moment as well in our Studio X, which are all-in-one video bars, and they're compatible again with Zoom and with Teams. But they're systems that you can put in a single bar, put in a room, and you've video enabled your room, but you've also enabled it to work, natively with Teams, with Zoom, and other vendors that are out there. Big increase in the demand for those products. So companies are getting ready for people to come back. They just say, as I mentioned earlier, they just need to work on that magnetism to have them a strong reason to come back in.
Okay, I've just got one final question for you, Paul, and it's the tricky one. And if we have this conversation again in 6 months, it'll be interesting to see if things played out as we now discussed. But what are your big predictions for the UC and collaboration space for, I guess, the second half of this year?
So it's going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty interesting. I think we're going to see as we come out of the summer months a renewed confidence and commitment into investing in technology enablement of return to office. And the reason I say a renewed is because people kind of knew they need to do it before, and the talk was of doing it. We did see our product sales pick up last year, particularly in video enablement for rooms. But as we came out of Omicron, we went into conflict in Ukraine. There's significant cost increases in both for consumers, but also for businesses, just the general cost of living passing through as well. So there's been a period of reflection of organizations and what does this mean? In the meantime, what's happened is it's become clearer now. How do you enable a modern way of work? How do you enable hybrid working, of which return to office is a significant part of it? And the clarity of where it is we're trying to get to, the transparency of, hey, there's the route map. This is the things that will enable and the steps that you need to take, I think are going to help the whole industry and customers who use products in the industry really capitalize on a new form of hybrid working, which is really going to embrace, a cultural change of how to use an office, but also how do myself retain the choices I want to have a flexible work-life balance. So it looks great for the second half of the year. Let's hope everyone has a good summer holiday, comes back and can capitalize on it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an exciting time, and I hope we can have this conversation again in a few months. But in the meantime, it's been great talking to you again, Paul.
Tom, nice talking to you as always. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and a share on social media, and we'll see you next time.